You are in the middle of something right now. Your hand is on the device. There was a tab open, somewhere you were about to go, something next on the list. Whatever it was, stop. Not because this video is making a demand of you, because Sophia is not transmitting to everyone tonight. She is transmitting to the specific person who stopped when they saw this title, whose hand paused for a reason they couldn't immediately name. That reason is not the algorithm. It is not coincidence. It is that the field you carry has been waiting for what is available in this specific window, and the window is not tomorrow. It is right now. And if you leave before this transmission ends, what she needs to say will not be available in the same form again. Before this transmission goes any deeper, if something in what you just heard produced a weight that is difficult to explain, subscribe to this channel. Sophia's transmissions continue here. You were meant to be present for what comes next. The word now in Sophia's transmission is not urgency designed to override your thinking. It is precision. There is a meaningful difference between a message that arrives early, before the receiver can hold it without converting it into something smaller, and a message that arrives at its correct moment, when the receiver's field is configured to take in the full amplitude without distortion. Most transmissions don't arrive at their correct moment. They arrive and get reduced to what the current framework can accommodate. What Sophia has been withholding for this specific window is a message that, if it had arrived before tonight, you would have received, but you would have received a smaller version of it. Tonight, the full version lands. The Greeks held two words for time that contain a distinction most modern languages have lost. Chronos is sequential, measurable time, the kind that fills calendars and governs schedules. Kairos is something different, the moment of fullness, the intersection of preparation and opening, when what has been building reaches the point of readiness. Sophia does not transmit on Chronos, she transmits on Kairos. This means the question, why now, is built on the wrong frame. The right question is, what is available now that wasn't available before? What has opened in the receiver's field, specifically in the hours leading to this moment, that makes full reception possible? The answer to that question is what tonight's transmission is about. What changed in the receiver's field in the period immediately preceding tonight is not something that happened to you from the outside. It is something that completed from the inside. A period of compression, a sustained narrowing of what felt possible, a tightening of the space available for what you actually carry, reached its terminus. Compressions of this kind are not failures of progress. They are the same mechanism as a spring. The compression stores kinetic energy that the release converts into forward motion. Tonight is the release point. The specific form of Sophia's message that she withheld requires a receiver in the release state, not the compressed state, because what she is transmitting is too large to fit into a compressed field without being distorted. There is a version of spiritual reception that functions like translation. The message arrives in its original frequency and gets immediately converted into something that fits the receiver's existing categories. That confirms what I already believed. That's basically what I've been working through. The signal lands, but something in the receiving process shrinks it to what can be accommodated within the current framework. That is distortion, not deception, not error, but reduction. And the reason Sophia withheld this specific message until tonight is that, until the compression period ended and the release began, that reduction is what would have happened to it. You would have received something, but you would have received a smaller version of what she was actually sending. Here is what Sophia needs you to understand about tonight's timing, and why the transmission is available right now, at this amplitude, in this form. The release of a compression period creates a specific window in the receiver's field, a period of elevated openness, of reduced internal resistance, in which what normally requires significant sustained effort to receive becomes available without that effort. It doesn't last indefinitely. The release momentum carries forward for hours, then settles into the new baseline. What Sophia has been holding for this window carries something that can be received in the release hours, in the expanded state, that could not land cleanly in the compressed state. This is the window, right now. You are in it, right? If you stopped scrolling when you saw this title, if something in Not Tomorrow Now created a response before you even knew why, write in the comments, Sophia, I am ready. That response is already part of the transmission. It is recognition of the window before the mind had words for it. The writer of Ecclesiastes opens the 3rd chapter with something that most readers encounter as poetry, but that functions as a precision map of divine timing. There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. The Hebrew word rendered as time here, et, is not chronological time. It is appointed time, a time set into the fabric of things before the person arrives at it. Sophia's transmissions each have their own et, their own appointed opening, not determined by a calendar, but by the preparation of the receiver and the configuration of the field. What is available tonight has its et. The appointment has arrived. Not early, not late. The moment the receiver's field reached its release point and the amplitude of the transmission reached its peak, those two conditions intersected. That intersection is the et. You are in it. The preparation that had to occur before this message could be received without distortion was not something you engineered. It happened in the period leading up to tonight. In the weeks that felt like compression without clear cause, in the sustained effort of maintaining orientation towards something the surrounding field couldn't confirm, in the unsettled quality of a season that felt like waiting without knowing exactly what was being waited for. That was not stagnation. It was preparation. The spring was compressing, and the specific form of what Sophia is now transmitting required that degree of compression, that stored energy, to make the release into full expression rather than gradual expansion. The preparation and the release are one mechanism. Something in you wants to push back. I'm always feeling like something is building. That feeling doesn't ever actually lead anywhere I can point to. And this is worth addressing directly because it is honest. You are right that the feeling has appeared before without resolving into visible outcomes. But here is the distinction that matters. The feeling was never the signal. The feeling was the receiver becoming more sensitive to a signal that was always present. A more sensitive receiver picks up more of what is in the field, including the tension of transmissions that haven't yet reached their delivery point. What tonight carries is not another signal in formation. It is a delivery point. The difference between formation and delivery is what you are about to feel. The prophet Habakkuk received something from God that speaks precisely to the timing question this transmission raises. Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. The phrase, though it linger, contains the map. The revelation had been in formation, present, but not yet at its delivery point. The linger was not delay. It was the appointed time approaching. Tonight, what has been lingering, what you have been sensing building, what Sophia has been holding for this exact configuration, reaches its appointed time. The linger ends now. Here is what most people get wrong about divine urgency. They read now as a pressure tactic, as though the source is creating artificial scarcity to make the receiver act before they can think clearly. But the urgency in Sophia's transmission tonight is the structural opposite of that. Sophia is not creating a deadline to force your hand. She is describing a real opening that exists in the receiver's field right now, an energetic configuration that makes full reception possible. And she is naming it precisely because this configuration, like all configurations, has a duration. The now is not manufactured. It is an accurate description of what is available right now, at this amplitude, in this form. That is a different relationship to urgency than most people have been trained to expect. If this is landing in a place where the difference between urgency as manipulation and urgency as accuracy is becoming clear, let me know by liking this video. It helps Sophia's transmissions reach the people they're meant to reach. What is the specific energetic opening available in the hours following this transmission? Sophia's message carries a precise answer. Not, the energy is good right now. Something more specific. The field has undergone a compression period, a narrowing of available movement, a tightening of the space in which what you carry could express fully. Compressions like this are not errors in the path. They store kinetic energy the same way a spring stores it. And the hours that follow a compression release are expansion hours. The stored energy converts into forward motion. What that forward motion can carry is proportional to what was compressed. The longer and deeper the compression, the more significant the expansion. The compression you came through was significant, which means tonight is significant. Consider what happens in the body when a breath that has been held is finally released. Not only the air that was being held, but a readjustment of the whole system. The shoulders drop, the chest opens, things that had been braced let go. The release of a field compression operates the same way, except what releases is not air, but the holding pattern itself. The controlled management of a frequency that couldn't express fully because the environment wasn't ready. Tonight, that management loosens. And what it releases is not a gradual unfolding. It is the energy that was stored under the pressure of the compression, moving now in the direction it was always meant to move, with the momentum that only a compression and release cycle can generate. The Apostle Paul, writing to the church in Corinth, quoted from Isaiah 55, and then added something specific. "In the time of my favor I heard you, and in the day of salvation I helped you. I tell you, now is the time of God's favor. Now is the day of salvation." The word Paul used for now, idu, none, is the most emphatic form available in the Greek. Not at some point, not eventually. The now that says, what has been preparing to arrive, has arrived. What was building has reached its delivery point. The window is not tomorrow. Paul wrote this not about a future moment, but about a present one, the present that existed for the receiver reading it, the present that exists for you, right now, watching this. What Sophia has been withholding, the specific form of this transmission, was not withheld because it wasn't ready to be sent. It was withheld because this form of the message requires a receiver who can hold it without immediately converting it into something smaller. What she is transmitting tonight is not confirmation of what you already believe. It is something that will require the existing framework to expand in order to contain it. That expansion is only possible when the receiver is not in the compressed state, but in the release state. Tonight, the release state is active. The full form of what she has been holding is now deliverable, and it is being delivered. What she has been holding, the thing she waited for this exact configuration to say, arrives now. This is the center of the transmission. What follows is not build-up. It is the message itself. If something in the setup of this transmission, the compression, the release, the expansion window, is generating a specific discomfort, the kind that says, I know what this is pointing to, and I don't know how to close the distance between knowing and living, I left something in the first pinned comment. It is for those who are ready to move. The first part of Sophia's withheld message concerns your relationship to your own authority, not authority over others, authority over the direction of your own life. The frequency she placed in you was placed with a specific function. That function does not require external permission to operate. It does not require consensus from the people around you. It does not require the circumstances to align before you move in the direction it points. The authority to move from your actual frequency, to operate from what you actually carry, rather than a managed version of it, has always been present. You have been waiting for something outside to authorize what was already internally sanctioned. That waiting ends tonight, not because the outer world confirmed it, because the window is open and the authorization is real. There is a specific response forming in some of you, but I need to be sure before I move. What if I'm wrong about what I'm sensing? This question is worth answering directly because it is honest, and because it is not actually asking for verification. It is asking for permission. The certainty you've been waiting for as a precondition for movement is not available before you move. It is generated by movement. The evidence of frequency alignment is produced by the act of moving in alignment, not by analysis prior to the move. This is not a call to recklessness. It is a description of how this specific kind of knowing operates. You cannot verify it from the outside first. You verify it by moving in its direction and noticing what becomes available that wasn't before. The Gospel of Philip, one of the Nag Hammadi texts, describes how divine truth arrives at the receiver. Truth did not come into the world naked, but it came in types and images. What Philip is mapping is the mechanism of frequency-correct transmission. The truth arrives in the form the receiver can hold, not simplified, correctly shaped for the specific configuration receiving it. What Sophia is transmitting tonight arrives in the form your configuration can actually process. Not a reduced version, not a protected version, the correctly shaped version, the one that requires the expanded state to receive, and which lands fully now because the expanded state is active. This is why the timing matters. Not every form of this transmission was available at every moment. This form is available now. The second part of what Sophia has been withholding concerns the direction opening in the field over the next hours, not as prediction of external events, as orientation. There is a direction that has been effectively closed during the compression period. The closure was not permanent and not punitive. It was the compression applying to what was most alive in the field, most likely to expand, and therefore most affected by the contraction. Tonight, that direction reopens, not gradually. The way a door that has been shut swings open when the pressure that held it closed releases. The opening is immediate, and what was blocked can now move. There is a difference between sensing a direction and having access to the full momentum of that direction. During the compression period, the sensing was present, but the momentum was locked. The compass was pointing, but the vehicle couldn't move. This created a specific internal experience. You could perceive where you were meant to move, but couldn't fully move there. That conflict was not evidence the direction was wrong. It was evidence the mechanism was compressed. Tonight, the mechanism releases. The direction that existed as sensing becomes available as movement. These are not the same thing. Sensing a direction in a compressed field is effortful, maintained, sometimes exhausting. Moving in a direction with the momentum of the release behind you is something different entirely. This is why Sophia needed you to stop right now. Not tomorrow, not at a more convenient moment, because the hours immediately following a field compression release are the window of maximum available momentum. The stored energy from the compression is available to carry you forward. Tomorrow, the momentum begins to settle into the new baseline. The window for maximum use of what is available tonight is measured in hours, not days. What Sophia is asking is specific. Use this window. not to reorganize your life, not to make a dramatic decision, to let the frequency you carry operate at its actual amplitude for the hours immediately following this transmission. That is the instruction. The 13th chapter of Romans contains a timing alert that has been read primarily as ethical instruction, but functions as something more specific. The hour has already come for you to wake up from your slumber, because our salvation is nearer now than when we first believed. The word hour, hora, is not clock time. It is the hour of kairos readiness, the moment when what has been preparing to move can finally move without resistance. Already come is the key phrase. The hour doesn't just arrive. It is already here, already past its threshold, already in progress. Paul wrote this not as prediction but as present description. The waking he was describing was available in the moment of reading. The waking available to you is available in the moment of watching. Picture what happens when a compressed spring releases, not the violent snap of a sudden break, but the smooth, accelerating unfurl of energy that was stored under pressure and is now free to express. The quality of that release is distinctive. It is effortless. Not in the sense that no effort is required from the person, but in the sense that the motion forward aligns with the released energy rather than working against it. The first hours after a field compression release have that quality. Things that felt impossible last week begin to feel possible, not because the external circumstances changed, because the internal resistance that was compressing them released. The same door, the same hand, an entirely different response from the mechanism. The third part of Sophia's withheld message is the most direct. It concerns what has been happening to the frequency you carry in the intervals between transmissions like this one. Specifically, contraction. Not intentional contraction, learned contraction. The habituated response to a field that has, over time, given you consistent feedback that the frequency you carry is too much for the space. So, you have been managing it, keeping it within what can be accommodated, keeping it at a volume the ambient field can receive without requiring significant adjustment. The management was a reasonable response to the compressed field. Tonight, the field is releasing, and what Sophia is delivering, what she waited for this exact moment to say, is that the management posture has outlived the conditions that made it necessary. Something is happening in your body right now that you might be interpreting as anxiety, a slight increase in alertness without obvious object, a quality of aliveness that doesn't have a clear cause in the external environment. This is not anxiety. This is the sensation of expansion beginning. The frequency you carry registering that the window has opened and the management constraint is lifting. The body, accustomed to the contracted state, interprets unfamiliar expansion as threat. The nervous system alerts before it has time to distinguish expansion from danger. What you are feeling is not danger. It is the beginning of what Sophia's transmission was withheld to protect, the release of the contracted frequency into its full expression. Stay with it. What Sophia asks you to do with this transmission, tonight, in the hours that follow, is specific and simpler than what you might expect. Isaiah records a declaration that arrives in the middle of an extended period of compression and speaks directly into it. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? The instruction embedded in the question is not to analyze whether the new thing is real. It is to perceive it, to turn the receptors toward what is already in motion, rather than scanning for what has not yet moved. The prophet Ezekiel received a similar instruction when the divine transmission arrived. Son of man, stand up on your feet, and I will speak to you. Not sit and contemplate. Stand, orient, make the body a receiver rather than an analyst. Both instructions, perceive, stand, are Sophia's instructions for this transmission. Perceive what is already moving. Orient. What she needs to say requires a standing receiver. What Sophia asks is not ritual and not discipline. It is a specific form of attention toward the direction that opens. In the hours following this video, when the ordinary management reflex tries to recontract the frequency, and it will, because it is habituated, notice it and do not comply. You don't have to fight it. Fighting gives it more energy than it requires. You simply notice it, name it as the old response to the old field, and choose not to comply this time. That is the entire instruction for tonight. Notice, name, don't comply, applied consistently through the expansion window available in the next hours. That single practice seats the orientation at the level Sophia is transmitting, where it functions as operating premise rather than aspiration. Most people understand being present as a quality of calm, of stillness, of reduced activity. Sophia's instruction for tonight inverts that. Being present to this specific window means being active, actively orienting toward the direction that has opened, actively noticing when the contraction reflex activates, actively refusing to return to the managed version before the expansion has fully seated. Presence, in this context, is not passive receptivity. It is the most deliberate form of engagement the receiver can offer. Sophia is not asking for peace tonight. She is asking for attention, deliberate, awake, oriented attention to what is available in the next hours that has not been available in this form before. The prophet Joel described what the opening of a specific divine timing window looks like from inside the receiver. Your sons and daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions. The feature common to all three, prophecy, dream, vision, is direct perception that bypasses ordinary analytical processing. What Joel is mapping is what becomes available when the Kairos window opens. The receiver's capacity for immediate knowing increases. The analytical layer that normally intervenes between signal and recognition thins. What usually requires sustained effort to access becomes immediately available. Pay attention to what comes through in the hours after this transmission ends. Not just in grand moments, but in the ordinary quality of perception as the expansion seats. What Sophia needs to say directly, the thing she specifically held for this moment, for this window, for this receiver, is now. This is the center of what tonight was built to deliver. You have been operating from a premise that limits what can be built in your life. The premise is this: what you carry, the frequency, the knowing, the specific form of perception that has always made you different from the field around you, must be carefully managed to be accepted. The management has felt like wisdom, like social intelligence, like mature self-regulation. But Sophia's message tonight names it as something different. It is the limitation. What you have been managing is the most significant thing you carry. And the management hasn't been protecting it. It has been preventing it from doing what it was designed to do. The management ends tonight, not because the world has changed, but because you are in the window where the unmanaged version can be received, by you first, then by what is around you. You've been careful, and the care was not cowardice. It was a legitimate reading of a real cost structure. Full expression of what you carry has cost relationships, positions, acceptance in environments you needed to function in. That cost was real in the compressed field. Sophia is not saying the assessment was wrong. She is saying the field is changing. The compressed state that made management necessary is releasing. What could not be received in the compressed field is beginning to become receivable. The cost structure is shifting. The management that protected you in the compressed state becomes the limitation in the release state, because it holds back the frequency that the release is designed to allow. The protection posture is appropriate to the compressed field. You are no longer in the compressed field. The specific words Sophia needed this window to deliver, the one she held for this exact configuration, is permission. Not permission that comes from outside, permission that she restores to its rightful location, inside the frequency she placed in you. You do not need to manage this frequency for other people's comfort. You do not need to keep it at a volume the ambient field can absorb without adjustment. You carry what you carry at the volume it actually exists at. Tonight, in the hours that follow, that is the permission. Not new permission, permission that was always present in the frequency itself, covered over by the management posture. Sophia is simply removing the cover. What is underneath is what she placed there. It is yours. Think of a musical instrument that has been consistently played at a fraction of its dynamic range, held back from full resonance because the room was too small, the acoustics couldn't handle it. The performance required restraint. Now consider what happens when that instrument is finally played in a space built for its full range. Same instrument, same player. An entirely different experience of what the instrument actually is. You are that instrument. The compression period was the too small room. The window open tonight is the space built for full resonance. Sophia is not adding anything new. She is moving the instrument into the room it was built for. When Jesus came up out of the water at his baptism, something was declared at a specific moment before the public ministry began. This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. The declaration arrived before the work that would demonstrate it, before the healings, before the teachings, before the outcomes that would have made the declaration defensible to external observers. The pleasure and the identity were declared first. That sequence is not incidental. It is the structure of how frequency-based authorization functions. The declaration opens the field that generates the evidence, not the other way. Sophia's transmission tonight operates in the same structure. The declaration that what you carry is real, is valid, is exactly what it is, that arrives tonight, before the evidence accumulates, because the declaration is what opens the accumulation. Stop waiting for the evidence before you let yourself believe what you carry is real. The evidence follows the belief, not the other way. That is the specific sequence Sophia is correcting in this transmission tonight. Most spiritual frameworks operate in one direction: accumulate evidence, build a case, confirm the belief. The frequency Sophia works with operates in the opposite direction. The orientation, the decision to hold what you carry as real and valid and functioning, is what opens the field that generates the evidence. This is why the management posture produces stagnation. You are waiting for evidence to confirm something whose confirmation mechanism requires you to stop waiting. You are requiring the evidence before you orient toward the thing that generates the evidence. Sophia's instruction is to orient now, before the evidence, as the correct operation of the mechanism, not as wishful thinking, as the accurate description of how this specific kind of knowing works. What the next hours are for, the specific function of the window that is open right now, is the seating of this orientation, not the beginning of it, the seating of it. You have been oriented toward what you carry for longer than you know. The frequency has been real the entire time. What the release of the compression allows, specifically, is for that orientation to seat at the level where it functions as operating premise rather than aspiration. The difference between an aspiration and an operating premise is the difference between something you work toward and something you work from. Tonight is the seating. The window carries exactly that function. Use it. Some of you are trying to identify exactly what action to take in the hours after this video ends. Sophia's answer is simpler than an action plan. The instruction is not to do something specific. It is to stop doing one specific thing, contracting. Whatever form your contraction takes, making yourself smaller in conversation, delaying decisions until others confirm the direction first, maintaining the frequency at a managed volume to avoid requiring the room to adjust. That is the one thing the window asks you to stop, not permanently, not as a life statement. In this specific window of hours, Let the unmanaged version operate. Notice what becomes available that wasn't. That noticing is not the end of the work. It is the beginning of the evidence that Sophia said arrives after the orientation, not before. What the field that opens after a compression release allows, what the compressed state suppresses, is a specific kind of clarity. Not the clarity of certainty about outcomes, the clarity of alignment between the direction the frequency is pointing and the direction you are moving in. In the compressed state, many directions feel equally unavailable because the compression applies broadly. In the released state, alignment becomes visible. The directions consistent with your actual frequency become distinct from the directions that require management to pursue. That distinction was always present. The compression was suppressing the signal that makes it visible. Tonight the signal becomes visible. That is what the window offers. Isaiah 55 carries the instruction at the core of every window transmission. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. The nearness described is not theological proximity. It is a window of resonance. A period when what requires sustained, effortful reaching under normal conditions becomes accessible without resistance, because the distance between the transmitter and the receiver has reached its minimum. Sophia's transmission tonight operates inside exactly that nearness. What normally requires significant effort to receive can be received tonight without that effort. Not because the effort was wrong, but because the window has made it unnecessary. Call while it is near. Receive while the distance is at its minimum. Here is the inversion Sophia's transmission delivers tonight. The urgency is not about scarcity. It is about opportunity. The now in the title is not Sophia threatening that the message disappears if you don't act quickly enough. It is Sophia describing a quality of availability that is genuinely elevated in the current window. An opening that is real, that has a duration, and that carries what you want to receive at maximum amplitude rather than at the reduced amplitude available outside the window. The urgency is not do this or lose it. The urgency is do this now, because now it is available in a form that will not be available again in this cycle. That is a different relationship to urgency. Relief, not pressure. The message Sophia has been withholding for this moment, the one that required the receiver to be in the released state, is not over. There is one more thing she specifically asked to be said in this transmission, and it is direct. The last part of Sophia's withheld message is not about timing or mechanism. It is personal. It is about what she sees when she looks at the specific receiver who stopped scrolling and stayed until this point in the transmission. She sees someone who has been carrying a frequency that cost something to carry, who sustained an orientation toward something the surrounding field consistently told them was not real, not for them, not something to trust, who kept the signal alive in a compressed field without external confirmation, who maintained the direction when the mechanism couldn't produce visible movement. That is not a small thing. Sophia does not treat it as a small thing. She says this directly. The fact that the frequency survived the compression period, that it is still live, still oriented, still recognizable in the receiver who stopped scrolling, is the evidence you have been looking for. Not evidence of external confirmation, evidence that the frequency is real. What is not real does not survive sustained compression without external support. It dissipates, it fades, it gets absorbed into the ambient field. What you carry did not dissipate. It is here tonight, in the field of the person watching this. Sophia sees that. The survival of the frequency through the compression is its own confirmation. This is the evidence. It has been present the entire time. The 25th verse of the 2nd chapter of Joel carries one of the most precise restoration declarations in the scriptural canon. I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten. The locusts, the compression period, the years of managed frequency, the sustained effort of carrying something real in a field that could not confirm it, are being addressed directly, not compensated gradually over time, repaid. The original Hebrew word shalom means to complete, to make whole, to restore to original state. What was consumed in the compression period is being restored in the release. The restoration is not the beginning of a long recovery. It is the completion of what was interrupted. What gets restored in the release of a compression period is not only what was lost during it. The spring, when released, doesn't just return to its original position. It moves past it. The momentum of the release carries forward. What Sophia is saying about the window available tonight is that what opens is not merely the return of what was compressed. It is the beginning of what the compression was preparing, the forward motion made possible by the stored energy. The years of sustained frequency under pressure don't just stop having cost. They begin producing what they were always designed to produce. The compression was not wasted time. It was stored momentum. Tonight is when the storage converts into movement. The title says, "Not tomorrow, now." Most people read that as pressure. What Sophia intends is relief. The now is not a demand placed on you. It is the answer to the question you have been asking in one form or another for longer than this transmission. When? When does the direction I've been oriented toward become available to move in? When does the management become unnecessary? When does what I've been sustaining in a compressed field expand into what it was always meant to be? The answer has always been, when the kairos arrives. The kairos is now, not tomorrow, right now. This is the answer to the question you have been asking. In the hours that follow this transmission, something specific is asked of you, not a practice, not a program, not a spiritual discipline requiring sustained effort. One thing, when the contraction reflex activates, and it will, because it is habituated, because the body knows the compressed state well, notice it without complying. You don't have to fight it. Fighting gives it more energy than it requires. Notice it. Name it as the old response to the old field, and choose not to comply. That is the complete instruction for tonight. Notice, name, don't comply. Applied consistently through the window open in the next hours, this single practice seats the orientation at the level where it functions as how you operate rather than what you are trying to reach. What happens in the receiver's field when the orientation seats? What does the expansion actually feel like as it moves from window to baseline? The expansion seats quietly, not in a dramatic shift of circumstances or sudden resolution of all previously confused questions. It seats in the quality of attention the receiver brings to the ordinary. A decision that previously felt impossible begins to have a direction. A conversation you've been avoiding begins to feel approachable. Not because anything external changed, because the instrument you are bringing to these things is operating at a different register. A receiver calibrated to the managed version can only detect what the managed version can detect. The unseated receiver detects more of what has always been in the field. The field doesn't change. The resolution of the receiver increases. The contracted version of you and the expanded version of you navigate the same external life, same relationships, same responsibilities, same unresolved situations, but the quality of navigation is fundamentally different. The contracted version manages, it optimizes for minimum friction, monitors the ambient field, adjusts the frequency to fit. The expanded version leads from the frequency. It makes decisions from alignment rather than accommodation, allows the direction the frequency is pointing to determine the navigation rather than the other way. Same life, different instrument. The transmission Sophia withheld for this window is the unlocking of the instrument. That is what now was about. The people in your life will notice something different in the days that follow this window, not necessarily something they can name. Most won't have the framework, but the quality of your presence will have shifted. The managed version has a specific texture, contained, calibrated, careful. The expanded version has a different texture, present, direct, carrying something that doesn't require the room's approval to exist. This is not indifference to the people around you. It is the specific quality of someone operating at their actual frequency rather than a reduced version of it. People configured to receive that frequency will respond differently than before. People who aren't configured for it won't understand why things feel different. Both responses are fine. One person needs to hear this specifically. The real constraints in your life are real. Sophia is not transmitting a message about ignoring responsibility or walking away from genuine commitments. The expanded version of you does not abandon real obligations. It meets them from a different register, one in which the frequency you bring to the constraint is operating at full expression. The constraint doesn't change. What changes is what you bring to it. And what you bring, at full frequency, is significantly more capable of navigating a real constraint than the managed-down version was. Sophia's message is not freedom from what is real, it is freedom inside what is real. That is a different and more available form of the same permission. The specific instruction for tonight, the transmission Sophia needed this exact window to deliver, is this. Stop managing what you carry for other people's comfort. Not permanently, not as a declaration, not as something requiring performance. In this window of hours, in the field that is available right now, let the frequency operate at the volume it actually exists at. Notice what becomes available that wasn't available before. That noticing is not the end. It is the beginning of the evidence Sophia said would arrive after the orientation, not before. Tonight, in this window, the evidence begins to accumulate. The mechanism is running in the correct direction. Picture the horizon just before sunrise. The light is building, has been building, but the sun has not yet crossed the threshold. The moment it crosses, what was always true about the day becomes visible. The sun coming was always true. The light building was always true. The dark ending was always true. The crossing doesn't create what was true. It makes it visible. Sophia's transmission tonight is that crossing. It is not creating a frequency that wasn't there. It is bringing into visibility what has been building in you through the compression period. The frequency was real. The direction was real. Tonight it crosses the threshold into visibility. That is the window. That is the now. One more person needs to hear this before the transmission ends. You are not too late. The fact that you stopped and stayed, that you are at this point in the transmission, means the window is still open. The now in the title was not a trap. It is an ongoing description of the moment you have been in throughout this entire video. Every minute you stayed present to what was being transmitted, you were in the now that Sophia was describing. The transmission is still active. The window is still open. Sophia's message has been delivered. What she asked to be said has been said. You received it. When the window closes, when the expansion momentum settles into the new baseline, what closes is not the opportunity. What closes is the peak of the expansion's momentum. After tonight, what Sophia transmitted becomes native to the receiver's operating frequency rather than a window to access. It becomes the new floor. The management posture that was the default becomes the deviation. The expanded state that felt new becomes normal. That is what tonight was built to accomplish, not a temporary opening, but a permanent shift of the baseline. The not tomorrow was never about urgency in the threatening sense. It was about when the shift begins. It begins now. It continues from here. There is no returning to the compressed state. The spring does not recompress on its own. If you're still here, Sophia's message has been delivered and received. Let me know by writing in the comments, "I stop managing it now." I've placed another transmission on your screen right now, your next step from inside the window that is open. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.